Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for October 3rd. Why does BDS get a foothold? One may ask why the BDS movement, that is the Boycott, Divest, and Sanction movement that targets Israel, Jews worldwide, Israeli organizations, Israeli cultural groups, performers, artists, academic institutions, why it targets it for being separated from the rest of the world, why these measures and these campaigns gain a foothold amongst college students who are seeking an education and overall educated adults in America, North America, or even in Europe. It may be because of the slant that universities seem to make when they are presenting the topic of Israel, and that the mainstream media takes when publishing articles about happenings in the Middle East. As well, many in Hollywood who seem to gain the attention of many in the general public, from teens to millennials to Gen Xers to baby boomers, they all seem to have a little bit of a left-wing agenda where their stance is to vilify Israel. Not only that, these same left-wing organizations seem to share similar stances with each other regarding things like gun control and gun rights, and of course they espouse the issue of gender equality and human rights, women's rights activism. But there seems to be a disconnect in their logic and consistency on these stances. I'll explain that in a moment. As reported in the Algemeyer newspaper in early September, a Rutgers University professor wrote a book and won an award for her premise that IDF soldiers spare the lives of Palestinians in order to subjugate them or to debilitate them. So, if an IDF soldier kills a woman or civilians, they're bad. And if they don't kill them and spare them, they have ulterior motives, and that is presented as credible and reasonable in this book that Ms. Pure wrote, Jasbir Pure, an associate professor of women's studies and gender studies at Rutgers University. And then a National Women's Studies Association gave her an award for this book. She posits that the Israeli Defense Forces have shown a demonstrable pattern over the decades of sparing the life and shooting to maim rather than to kill. Now, keep that thought in mind, because it is, quote, purportedly a humanitarian practice to spare death by shooting to maim, and that Palestinian populations are purportedly debilitated and yet alive, and that the IDF is not using the humanitarian effort to spare someone's lives, but have an ulterior motive to shoot to maim in order to debilitate a population of people. Now, this is just simply absurd and does not make any sense whatsoever. And please keep in mind that the Women's Studies group who gave this book an award also seemed to have ignored and not raised up or given any awards to books that I saw that examine the legitimized and systemic oppression of women in the Middle East area and the Arab world as a whole. So again, a bit of an inconsistency. Also, keep in mind that the left is often arguing over and over again in issues of police violence or when civilians are killed in military operations, that folks who have guns, even if it's home defense people, in their shoot for defense or to quell a violent episode, should actually shoot to maim and not to kill. And that is a whole theory amongst gun control advocates and anti-police violence advocates. So which is it? Do you want people, law enforcement and military and legitimate gun owners who have home defense guns, to shoot to kill or to shoot to maim? Because based on this book and this woman's position, both of them are wrong. And it just is illogical. Now, in response to this book, it is also noted that Pure is a supporter of BDS and always has been, and that even she has said the ultimate purpose of this book is to labor in the service of a free Palestine. Now, there are several people, learned academics, who have posted on and released their own opinion about the book. Seth Mandel, the op-ed of the New York Post, said in a Twitter response that this is a blood libel because the academic anti-Semitism is not just tolerated, it is encouraged and rewarded. Andrew Getrayer, director of Rutgers Hillel Group, added that the fact that this unreadable piece of dreck received an academic award is unsurprising. The book has raised many concerns because it is published by Duke University, which has also been active in BDS activities. And that Richard Kravitz, the president emeritus of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, a network of academics who seek to counter anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism, he noted at the core of this book was an outrageous and grotesque resurrection of classic and anti-Semitic trope that Jews purposely and sadistically harm and kill non-Jews. Kenneth Waltzer, executive director of the Academic Engagement Network, who opposes BDS campaign activities against Israel worldwide on college campuses, said that Pure, when she wrote the book, was more interested in defining and theorizing than getting things as they are, meaning she failed to do research and write about facts. This Kenneth Waltzer went on to say that the professor displayed terrible and unapologetic anti-Semitism. He also noted that when she was at an event at Vassar College in 2016, she claimed that Israel manifests an implicit claim to the right to maim and debilitate Palestinian bodies and environments. This was noted in a transcript of one of her talks provided by the Alumni Association. So we can see that this professor certainly had a bias in her book, and the organization that then lifted up her book and awarded it clearly has the same bias. To the point that educational and news organizations are framing stories, whether with a blatant agenda to vilify Israel or by leaving out pertinent information and facts, then the student bodies and news-consuming public can only digest and process what is being presented to them. And this is a travesty against academic honesty and integrity and honest journalism. Another example to illustrate this was just 2 weeks ago in a New York Times article that attempted to explain Yom Kippur. It framed the holy holiday as one where the nation of Israel, the Israelites, were being punished for its rebellion in the desert. The article did not mention the fact that it is a celebration of God's grace to a nation and atonement for repenting. It is not about a punishment, and of course the article didn't explain that, but it is about reconciliation. If one had no context of history or Judaism, after reading this article in the New York Times, one would walk away thinking that this tiny nation of Israel and its people, the Israelis, from history immemorial, that they are classic in screwing up and making God mad and are overall bad people. And this is a shame. This is shoddy journalism and poor history. I can bring forth lists of major newspaper articles and major TV network news broadcasting stories dating back decades that seems to frame a story with a spin to vilify Israel or its people or leave out context, history, or pertinent facts as it reports on an issue or event, all to leave a bad taste about Israel in the mouths of the viewer or the reader. The list is too long to get into in this broadcast. But these two examples that I bring forth here, the book from Rutgers University's professor, the award granted to it, and the New York Times article about Yom Kippur, these are just two small examples of that we cannot trust modern mainstream media outlets or our esteemed educational institutions and our so-called watchdog interest groups, because they are infiltrated by people with deep agendas with no regard for the truth or ethics within their own industries. This is a huge disservice to the public, and it is dangerous for Jews, Israelis, and for people who support them or people who are looking for truth and integrity in a modern era to identify problems for what they really are and attempt to solve them. Please keep our organization and those other organizations that seek the truth and try to espouse it and reveal it, keep those in your prayers. Shavua Tov. Have a great week.